For the moment, we look at the situation on the ground. It is day 8 of the Ukraine war, and here's all that's happened since our last broadcast 24 hours ago. We start with Kyiv. At least 3 massive explosions were heard in the capital. They triggered air raid sirens, which blared through the night. An explosion was also reported in a railway station. Women and children were leaving Kyiv when the station was struck. Russia heavily shelled a town called Borodnica. It is to the northwest of Kyiv. Now, most of it stands completely charred. From buildings to streets, they were all up in flames. Take a look. This is a place called Bucha. Again, not too far from Kyiv. What you see is the aftermath of Russian airstrikes. I'll show you another village near Kyiv. This one's called Gorenka. The capital and its adjacent towns were not the only ones shelled in the last 24 hours. Lviv, Zhytomyr, Frankivsk, Chernihiv, Odessa, Mariupol, Kherson and Kharkiv, they've all come under fresh attacks. This fuel tank in Chernihiv was shelled by the Russian forces. At least 5,000 cubic meters of diesel is burning as we speak. Mariupol too is burning. The city's mayor says Mariupol is being shelled continuously. At least 128 people are in hospital. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky had this to say.
Russia's missiles and bomb strikes of Ukrainian cities are a confession that they failed to do anything substantial on our soil. Chernihiv, Sumy, Mykolaiv keep their defenses. Odessa, they seek to ruin our Odessa, but the only thing they are going to see is the seabed of the Black Sea, as they themselves are a bottom.
A Ukrainian city called Enerhodar is home to Europe's largest nuclear plant. Today, its residents are all out on the streets. They say they will not let Russian troops enter.
Героям слава! Слава Україні! Героям слава! Героям слава!
Місто сьогодні, завтра і післязавтра буде постійно.
Героям Героям слава!
Thousands are also out on the streets of Melitopol. It is located close to Kherson, the city that Russia claims to control now. These protesters are chanting, Melitopol is Ukraine. Gunshots were heard during this rally.
Стріляють, суки, по мирним людям. По мирним людям стріляють. Мелітополь, виходь зараз! Виходьте всі! Україна! Мелітополь!
This is what Ukraine looks like after a week of war. Now let's tell you how Russia sees this war. The Kremlin has published images and videos of its quote-unquote special military operation. That's what they're calling it, not war, special military operation. In a first, Russia has also come up with casualty numbers. The Kremlin says 498 Russian troops have been killed in the war. At least 1,600 have been wounded. Ukraine says the number is much higher. As for Ukrainian soldiers, at least 2,800 casualties, nearly 4,000 wounded. A church in Lviv held a memorial service for the fallen soldiers. It is also collecting donation for those still on the front line.
We have been fighting and defending our land since 2014. So our war has been going on for 8 years. This escalation of the conflict that took place and the full-scale invasion is simply Putin showing his true face and openly admitting that he is at war with Ukraine.
Russia found itself isolated at the United Nations General Assembly. A special session of the Assembly voted in favor of a resolution. It called on Russia to withdraw troops from Ukraine. A total of 141 countries sided with Ukraine. 35 abstained. India was among them. So was South Africa. And very interestingly, China, it abstained from voting for or against Russia. But the United Arab Emirates, which had abstained from voting at the United Nations Security Council some 3 days back, decided to vote against Russia this time. And this only goes on to show how fast everything's changing in this war, be it diplomatically or militarily. Only 4 countries stood by Moscow at the UN, the usual suspects: Syria, Belarus, Eritrea, and North Korea. Now, here's something that one must note. The UNGA may have voted for Russian troop withdrawal, but it will not change a thing. The resolution is non-binding. At best, it is symbolic. As we speak, at least 1 million people have fled Ukraine. The United Nations is calling it the fastest exodus of people in this century. Never have 1 million people fled a country within a week. Russia is now being probed for war crimes. The International Criminal Court is investigating, and it will decide whether Russia committed war crimes in Ukraine or not. The court says there is reasonable basis to believe that the Kremlin is guilty. What happens if Russia is indeed found guilty? Honestly, not much. Russia is no longer party to the ICC. It withdrew in 2016. That was when the ICC had branded Russian annexation of Crimea a quote-unquote occupation. 6 years on, Russia has invaded Ukraine once again. At least 39 countries have called for an investigation. As we speak, all of these Ukrainian towns and cities are burning. Russia and Ukraine are meeting once again for ceasefire talks. They're happening in Belarus, just like the last time. And just like the last time, not very much is expected to come out of these talks. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.